Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Matchbook Horse Racing Podcast. We've got loads to get through because we've got some Breeders' Cup action on the way. We won't do Breeders' Cup Friday. We'll do Breeders' Cup Saturday. And for all ye jumps fans out there, we're going to kick off with some really good jump racing between Wetherby, the Charlie Hall, and traditionally some very strong handicaps at Ascot, including the staying contest, which has got a decent amount of runners in it. But we haven't got that, I suppose, across the board on the jumps. Wetherby have been not exactly blessed with just 7 runner fields by and large, but we're still going to find plenty of bets for you. And it feels like jumps racing is in full swing. We will get to the Breeders' Cup at the back end. Like and subscribe across all platforms, wherever you're listening or watching. It's the best no-cost way of supporting this podcast. I say that every week, but it is perfectly genuine. If you do like our content, you want to support us in a no-cost way, then just like and subscribe, and it helps everyone. So do that, please. We kick off on ITV Saturday with the 1:15 at Wetherby, and that's how we're going to go. We're going to go in ITV running order, and then the American action at the back end. It also includes the Down Champion Chase. How could I forget? That'll be bang in the middle as well, the 240 there. Steve Jones and Donn McClean are with me, and I'm going to throw straight out to Steve and say hello. Who do you like in the 1:15 at Wetherby, Steve?
I like William Cody, Billy the Kid, who was second in this race last year when it was much more competitive. It was won by the Edgar Wallace on that occasion, who went on to win again at Leicester and then progressed with hitting the frame in another couple of competitive races. So he's clearly able to go well fresh because he ran really well in it last year. He likes Wetherby, and although he doesn't win all that often, he's pretty consistent. And I just thought there was less question marks about William Cody than some of the others. And he was quite an all right price. I thought he was overpriced, to be honest. So, William Cody around 8.5.
Hello, Don. Who do you like in the opener on the ITV running order?
Yeah, tricky one to start with, Tom. I thought King's Threshold was the one I came down on in the end, Emma Lavelle's horse. I just thought his run at Ascot on his penultimate run last season was a good run. He stayed on really well. He came under a ride around the home turn, but he wasn't helped by a loose horse either between the last two fences. But he stayed on really well. He just got up on the far side to get up and beat Storm and Home by a head. Storm and Home was with Ben Pauling, then is now with Dan Skelton. Ran well there the other day at Wetherby 2 weeks ago, and King's Threshold did shape that day as if he'd maybe improve for a step out and trip, but he went to Kempton next time in his final run last season, stepped up to 3 miles and actually ran as if it was too far from him. It looked like stamina just caught him out. So he's back down on trip today. That 2 miles 5 at Ascot seemed to suit him well. He's back down tomorrow. He's back down a wee bit further and trip 2 miles 3.5 furlongs at Wetherby. So it's probably not as good or as strong a stamina test as is ideal, but it should be fine for him. He does go well on good ground. He's only had 5 runs over fences. He's only 4 pounds higher than he was when he won that race at Ascot. So that's a positive for him. And yeah, I think he's a horse who can progress again as well. Harry Cobden's a good booking as well. I think the ground is key. A couple of horses in here, including Choose the News, who probably prefer a softer ground. But I think King's Threshold has plenty in his favour.
Okay, and I'll go with Tedley for a yard that are still going along really nicely. For all they drew a blank last Saturday, they had a good day on the Friday, the Cheltenham meeting. This is personally a time of the year where it's half stakes or no stakes. It's just I find it very difficult this time of year, so it's certainly not getting carried away at all. And this is a trappy little contest, I think, where you can make a case for Choose the News. Definitely, if he handles probably the best surface he'll have won on. His last win came on heavy, but he has won on good to soft. I thought King's Threshold was worth loads of respect as well, albeit first start of the year. Tedley, though, comes here with a race under his belt. I think that's going to be a plus. And also bang in form with that chase success. So he just looks a horse, a 5-year-old who, I mean, he's going to have to be a better chaser if he's going to, than he was hurdler, if he's going to take this off 118. But that's the way he looked last time, I thought. He's improved with cheap pieces on in his hurdles career. And then he just looked a much more natural chaser, I thought. So hopefully he can continue that progression at 5.5 Tedley. But by no means a very strong shout, personally. I thought it was difficult. The 1:30 Ascot is up next. 2 mile 3 novices handicap chase. I'm sitting this one out. Don, straight over to you, please.
Yeah, Baloo, it's a tricky race as well. It's a small field. You can make cases for all of them, really, including what Pat, the ex-Willie Mullins horse. But I thought Baloo was interesting. He's only had 5 runs over hurdles. He won well at Kempton back in April, and that was on good ground. He jumped really well that day. Then last time he went to Warwick and he ran on well as well. He finished second behind Uggy, and the pair of them pulled nicely clear. That was over 2 miles 5. The third horse that day was Lallygag of Paul Nichols, who's won 2 of his 4 or 5 races since. He's been up to a mark of 135. He's £10 higher than he was then. Baloo is only £4 higher than he was at Kempton, and I still think he could be potentially a well handicapped horse. The drop and trip may not be ideal. He's from the family of Gooniella, but I think it was 2 miles 5. He stayed that distance well. It's only 2 miles 3, and we know that Ascot's stiff and stiffer than Kempton, so that should be okay for him. The Nicky Henderson horses, they're just getting going now as well. I think that winner on Saturday at Cheltenham, and I think he's had 2 winners from his last 10 runners. So you expect they're going to come into form and they're going to continue to progress as the season goes on. But Baloo, he's a lightly raced horse. And yeah, I think he's got plenty in his favour as well, including the ground.
Okay, and Steve, who do you like?
Oh, it's bad. It would probably end up being bad. There's 5 runners, and Ben Pauling's got 2 of them, bad and leader in the park. Seems that Ben Jones has the choice at Pauling's these days, and he's gone for leader in the park. But he'll make the running. And I just got a funny feeling that Bad, who's had a big reputation, as has leader in the park, it was said to be Ben Pauling's best novice last year. Didn't quite work out like that, but he's got a lot of potential. But Bad came over from France with a big reputation. He hasn't quite done it. He's his own worst enemy in many respects, and that he is too keen. But I just wonder whether he can grow up a little bit, and first time out might just be the time to catch him, because he ran really well in this race last year when third to Knickerbocker of Glory. Again, it's a less competitive race this year, quite markedly. And I think finally Bad can get that British win. He wore cheek pieces and a tongue tie when we last saw him. He's not got anything on this time. So maybe they've sorted him out at the golf course that Ben Pauling trains on. And if that's the case, then Bad can realise his potential.
All right, that's a couple of shouts in the 2 mile 3 novices handicap chase. We've got nothing in the Mayor's Hurdle. Apologies, everyone. 3 no bets there, so we'll skip on. That's at Wetherby to the 205 at Ascot, the Burn Group handicap chase. And I'll kick off with Marta Tour if I can, who is 6.0. That's what I wrote down. Yep. I backed Frere Dam when they faced each other at Ascot just after the Cheltenham Festival. And I thought Marta Tour was really impressive that day in beating him and the rest. He's had one go since where he won at the back end of the season at April. He is pretty versatile ground-wise. He's won on heavy at Newbury, but this is going to be decent ground. And crucially, he's won his last couple of starts on a sound surface. He'll have no problem, I don't think, coming back in distance off the back of the Sandown run. It's just whether or not he's going to be absolutely ready first up, but he's gone well fresh in the past. Venetia Williams is always quiet this time of year. She can have a good meeting here. And I think there's a lot of, he's a rising 8-year-old. I think there's a lot of upside to him. And he should have a bit of pace to chase, which is exactly what he wants with a few bits of pace in there. So again, it wasn't an overly confident shout, but there's 10 runners in here. He's a place price as well at 6.0. So I'll go small stakes win place Marta Tour. Steve, back to you, please.
Yeah, when can you bet a horse trained by Paul Nichols, who's won 4 of his last 5 races, at 15? I just can't get my head around it. And I think this is the overreaction to Paul Nichols' slow start to the season. But this is generally the weekend. When he has a slow start to the season, this is the weekend where they start kicking into gear. And Matterhorn, well, he's been on the go most of the summer. He last ran a couple of months ago. So he's not one of those that's returning from a huge break. So he'd still have that core fitness. And last time out, he was beaten around Newton Abbott at 4-11 when pulled up. But he made a bad mistake early on, and it was soon clear that he wasn't going to really play a part. But before that, he'd been mopping up, and he does need good ground. So he's not a horse where you give him a run and see what you do next time, because if the weather changes, he's going to be screwed. So he has been climbing the handicap winning weaker races. But I just think this horse is way overpriced. He'll like the conditions. He'll be fitter than a lot of them who will just be having their first run back and maybe a sighter. And like I say, he's an improving 6-year-old. Nico de Boinville rides him for Paul Nicholls. He won on him a couple of starts ago. So I just think it was kind of a price-based thing where I thought this was an open race, but he was way overpriced considering we've seen this happen so many times in the past with Nicholls horses.
Yeah, Nico's 2 from 4 for Paul Nicholls. I know that's a tiny sample, but he's got a 50% strike rate. It's definitely an interesting jockey booking, but I guess it makes sense given he's ridden in the last twice and he won on him a couple of starts ago. Don.
Yeah, I like Sansegal. I've liked him as a horse for a while. He ran in this race last year and he finished third in the end, but I thought he ran a lot better than that. He led from early, from about the third fence, I think, and he had them all stretched out down the side of the track. He was a clear leader. He was caught and passed at the second last, and actually he rallied then, so he shaped like a horse who had more left to give. He ran off a mark of 137 that day. He's off 135 tomorrow. And he went back to Ascot then for another race at the November meeting over the same course and distance. And he looked a likely winner when he came down at the last. Boot Hill won the race. Actually, Frere Darm finished second. He probably would have finished behind Sansegal that day had he stood up. And he probably was a wee bit out of sorts towards the end of the season last year. And he returned at Chepstow. He was well beaten at Chepstow there a few weeks ago, but he shaped like a horse who was just that run would bring him forward. And for me, the chase track at Ascot, it's a tricky track to jump around, and horses have proven their ability to jump around it before. That's a big positive for me going back. Sansegal has only run twice. He finished third in that race, and then he fell when it looked like he was at least going to be competitive with Boot Hill. It was going to be a good race between them. He's still only 6. He's had his wind operation in the off season, so there's the second run back after a wind operation. And he goes well in a season return. So I think he's got lots in his favour, and yeah, I think he's a big player in the race.
Okay, Martator, Matterhorn, and Sansegal. We move on to Weatherby. So this is the 222. Nothing for me. Don, you're with Katira, who ran over 2 miles last year in the mares race. She's now up to 3. I was probably closest to her, to be honest, but I am sitting it out. Over to you.
Yeah, like she was well beaten in the mares race on this day last year, and that's a bit of a worry because back at Weatherby, but as you're saying, Tom, way up in trip, and look, she's not guaranteed to get it, but she won well over 2.5 miles at Aintree last time. Now she does go well at Aintree. She's run well 3 times there. She's run there 3 times, run well on all 3 occasions. And in that Aintree race, Django Bay was pretty badly hampered at the second last, and then stayed on well to get close to her, but I thought she had the race in the bag as well. That was on soft ground too. She's a better mare on better ground, and the distance is a worry, but she did see out 2.5 miles the last day. She finished second over 3 miles at Kempton in November, and she's a half sister to El Presente, who's a Badger Beer or Badger Ales chase winner. So there is plenty of stamina in her degree. Over this trip, she's won twice, finished third once in this on this day last year on her season debut, so she can go well fresh, and the Dan Skelton horses are in really good form. I just think she's got plenty in her favour, taking on a couple of horses who have a few question marks against them maybe.
Okay, Katira for you, and who do you like, Steve?
I like Twig, who developed into a really smart chaser last season, was second in the Ultima to Chianti Classico, who we'll see later on in the card. The Cheltenham Festival, and that was on heavy ground, which is a surprise because Twig was always thought to need decent ground, which he's going to get at Weatherby. His record over hurdles was 3 wins from 6 starts. He also finished second to a useful horse called Shearer at Cheltenham in a novice hurdle. He's so tough, this horse, and I just think that maybe this might be a really good opportunity for him. He's ridden by Bo Morgan, who's not with Ben Pauling anymore, but he is owned by Bo's mum, Twig. So that's the tie at why he's riding him. But I just think he might just get on the front end and just repel all of them. Dashel Drasher is such a wonderful horse, but not a great record first time up. And he's getting on, the old boy. So I'm going to take a chance with Twig at small stakes.
All right. That's Twig at small stakes for the 222 at Weatherby, Katira for Don. We then come to the Down Royal Champion Chase, 240. And so this horse, Envoy has effectively turned into a team steam. I'm officially no bet, but I'm going to be against the favourite when we get to the lays. One of you go first, Envoy. Don't mind who.
You go, John. Your turf.
My turn, right. On my turf, yeah, Grant. Look, it's a hell of a race, and hopefully the ground will be okay and they'll all run. And I'm sure that Dan Royal will produce good ground or ground the easy side of good.
Is the worry, just sorry, Don, is the worry, so the worry there will be too quick?
Yeah, for Jerry Calam, yeah.
Because that's got to be the issue, right? If it's good ground, genuinely good ground, do you think he might not go?
Well, there's a chance, yeah. No, Gordon has said during the week that it needs to be at least safe for him to run. But generally, this meeting, it's such an important meeting for Dan Royal. I'm sure they'll have the grounds pretty much spot on, which they always do for this meeting. Look, Envoy Jerry Calam, it's not that he doesn't handle, like, good to soft ground should be fine for him. He won at Aintree good to soft ground. He won the Scilly Isles and good to soft ground. And I thought 2.5 miles on that type of ground would be way too sharp for him. But Envoy like, he's such a likable horse. He did everything right in this race last year and just got beaten by Jerry Calam. Rachel Blackmore gave him a super ride. I just think maybe on the better, like, it is probably going to be better ground than it was last year. It was soft ground last year. He was beating the neck. Jerry Calam, he's going to be moving into the season. I mean, like, he's a super horse. I think he was my horse to follow for all of last season. He finished second in the Gold Cup, so he's a top class staying chaser, and he won this race last year. So you understand why he's odds on. I just think Envoy, although he's 10 now, rising 11, he proved last season that he still retains all his ability. He finished second in the Ryanair Chase, and he loves Dan Royal. He's run here 5 times. He's won 4 times. He won his maiden hurl, his beginner's chase, his intermediate chase, and he won this race 2 years ago, and he was beaten the neck last year. So it's some record at the track at this meeting at this time of year. So I just thought all that in his favour. Yeah, I thought at around about 4.5 or thereabouts, he was worthwhile against Jerry Calam.
Steve?
Yeah, agree with that. I think if this race was run at Leopardstown or Punchestown later in the season, there'd be no contest, Jerry. You'd want to be with Jerry Calam. But the fact it's at Down Royal, where Envoy Allen has such a great record and in this race, then I couldn't possibly bet Jerry Calam in that. And he only scrambled home last year. So, yeah, like Don, I'm keen on Envoy Allen at the prices.
The 258 at Weatherby is the Charlie Hall Chase. Brave Man's Game, who was beaten in this last year, of course, on reappearance, when odds on is slightly bigger now, or is bigger now. Brave Man's Game is 2.62. I will just kick off with him, and I make him a bet, having had his win done at this price. He's not a horse that's ever going to fill you with confidence. Grey Dawning is the up and comer. He's got to give £3 a Brave Man's Game. And I wonder if, and I know there's a question on the Nichols form, but I just wonder if they'll have approached this differently. I think they will want to win this more than they did last year going into it. Last year was all about the building through the season, this, and then Kempton, and he gave him another run in the Betfair Chase at Haydock, I know, which I don't think was originally necessarily part of the plan. I think that they're winning this is more important this year. He's had his win done. And there were signs last year that Kempton, that he retained all of his old ability. He was just beaten by Hewitt, but he finished ahead of Allaho, and I don't know what would have happened. Maybe, he would have got beaten by Shishkin, but and then it tailed off a little bit after that. I think at this price, he's worth a bet. Brave Man's Game, 2.62. I might get after him a bit, to be honest. I can really see him winning. Steve.
Yeah, there were times last season, including in this race, where I didn't think Brave Man's Game fancied it so much anymore. He hasn't won since the King George of nearly 2 years ago. And although he runs to a decent point, he might have been, well, you couldn't call him unlucky in the King George because, of course, Shishkin Falwen was the unlucky horse. But I just worry that he's getting a bit long in the tooth now. He's 9, going to be 10 soon. He's been in a lot of deep races, this horse, and he has been an excellent horse, but he's nowhere near as good as he was. And he's meeting a horse in Grey Dawning, who is one of the coming force. I was so impressed with this horse last year. I wasn't really a believer for the early parts, and I didn't think that being joint favourite or favourite for the 2.5 mile Grade 1 novice at Cheltenham, I didn't think he warranted being that, but what he did, I thought, was hugely impressive. If there's a new kind of Gold Cup hope for Britain, I think it's Grey Dawning. And although the ground, it would have been nice to have been a bit softer, I just think that this horse is going to break hearts, and I don't think Brave Man's Game's heart is as strong as it used to be.
That just on the ground as well. That's another reason I'd be in Brave Man's Game camp just over Grey Dawning. I think I agree. Back end of the season, I'm sort of hoping really that Grey Dawning's a better horse than Brave Man's Game because he is the British hope. But I just think now is the time to go the other way. Don.
Yeah, look, it's a really interesting race, this, and it normally is the Charlie Hall. Grey Dawning, yeah, I again agree with all that Steve said, but I would be worried about the ground. I think Dan Skelton did say that he wouldn't run him if the ground wasn't soft. He's got the option of the Colin Parker on Sunday as well. I think I'm not sure if he's going to be still in that, but we'll see how that develops. But Brave Man's Game, he does set the standard, and it's kind of mad that he hasn't won since King George 2 years ago, isn't it? But I do like French Dynamite. I think he's unexposed over this type of trip. He was very good the last day at Punchestown. Now, look, the race might have fallen apart a wee bit, conflated, unseated at the first, and he had a race fitness advantage over some of his rivals, but there was a lot to like about the way that he did it. That was 2 miles and 7. He's a half-brother to Mighty Potter and Caldwell Potter and Brighter Days Ahead, like a phenomenal family. And he is a talented horse. He was second in the Paddy Power Chase. He finished fourth in a Ryanair Chase. And I just think that this kind of a sharp 3 miles on good ground at a flat track, that all suits him well. Miles Morris and Rob Cord, they won the race last year with Gentleman's Game, beat Brave Man's Game. And it's a kind of a similar scenario. He's got buckets to find on ratings, but I think he can outrun his rating. And I thought Conflated is interesting now. It's interesting that Gordon Elliott's bringing him over to run him here left-handed as opposed to John Royal right-handed, which I think would suit. Wouldn't be surprised to see him run a big race, but I think French Dynamite is the bet of the prices.
Okay, the 3:15 Asker is over 2 miles. The Lavazza handicap hurdle. Fiercely Proud is 5.5. Secret Squirrel is 6.0. Firefly 9.0, as is Stream of Stars. And then we're into bigger prices. Steve, who do you like?
There's a real interesting stat I came across when doing research for this race. 2 miles over hurdles around Ascot. In the last 2 years, there's been 12 races. Only one winner didn't lead or was prominent or right up with the pace. 6 made all or disputed the running. So it's not easy to come from off the pace. And I think that's accentuated when the ground is decent. The problem is there is a few contenders to make the running, but Break My Soul has made all the running to win novice races on his last 2 starts back in the spring. Okay, he was long odds on for both of those, but he's certainly got a lot of potential. I think the reason we're getting a bigger price than maybe he should for a horse of Nicky Henderson's, who's won easily the last twice, is because he was beaten off 106 in a handicap, in his only handicap at Newbury back in March, and he's now 122. So he's now more than a stone higher in the weights than when he was beaten 14 lengths. But that was when Nicky Henderson's horses were just in dire form. And I think that masks a horse that's got real potential, goes on decent ground. As I said, likes to be up with the pace. Hopefully they don't decide to do anything different. And has the potential, even though he's higher than the weights than when he was beaten, he's got the potential to go through the grades a little bit. So Break My Soul is my fancy in this.
All right, I'm going to go with a Fireflyer for Paul Nicholls. Hope he is bouncing back to form. Got a couple of his on side. There was a really interesting stat I came across here. Over 2 miles at Ascot, I forwarded it on to Steve. You often want to be up with the pace. And this horse will be ridden up with the pace. I didn't know that. But crucially, I think I just think he's got a lot more ability than he's been showing of late. Now, the win being done may be the key, and I think often when like a bit like Brave Man's Game, but this horse has had his win done. He's here fresh. He's back on good ground, which is what he definitely wants. And he went off at 6.5 for the EBF final at Sandown, and he ran no sort of race, but he's clearly expected to be a bit better than he's shown, I think. And then subsequent to that, Sandown was very disappointing in April. Might be fresh as the time to get him, but I definitely think having had his win done on a sound surface, he can be better than 126. So Firefly for me, Dom.
Yeah, I like our champ here at the prices, Tom. He's top weight, but I don't worry too much about that. Freddie Gordon's taking £5 off, which is grand when you get up to that type of weight. I thought he was very good at Plumpton at the end of March when he won the Sussex Champion Hurdle. He was kind of ridden just off the pace that day. He was a wee bit wide, but he quickened up well. He won really impressively. He went up £8 for that, which wasn't surprising. And he went to Cheltenham. He was sent off as favourite for a race there in April at their April meeting. And he led, but he was just hassled on the front end the whole time. I thought he did well enough to keep on to take third place that day. He wasn't beaten that far with 10-10-10. And then at Market Raising the last day, he just ran like he might come on for the run. He was off on 132, then it's 131 now. So he didn't run badly at Ascot in November last year on soft ground, which would have been not ideal for him. He'd be better back on better ground. And I think he can come forward from his run the last day. And, it's interesting stat of Steve's about front runners at Ascot. Those big 2 mile handicap hurdles, you kind of expect that there's going to be a really fast pace on and that the winner is going to come from in behind. But often at Ascot and at Newbury as well in the Betfair hurdle, it doesn't seem to happen as much as it used to. So, yeah, like it's an interesting stat. But, yeah, that style of racing, our champ does like to be up handy. So that's going to suit. The ground will suit. There's an ideal trip from just short of 2 miles is ideal. He's got a lot of pace. And I think if he sits just behind the pace as opposed to leading, then yeah, that could suit him well. So I think he can go well at a price.
One of the big things, I don't know if this is the Ascot thing, one of the big things on Newbury, this is slightly sidetracked, but it's definitely a case that they have more often than not have had a standing start over the last 10 years because it's a weird start in between obstacles. They come in too quickly. Then they always come back for a standing start and then it pays to speed. And I don't know if that's the case with this Ascot, but it's definitely interesting. We move on to the Weatherby, the 332. This is a handicap hurdle over 2 miles. I'll go, Don. I'll come straight back to you, please. Who do you? Oh no, you haven't got one. Goblet of Fire for Steve and I. Good. I can't remember why I like Goblet of Fire. So Steve, take it away. Ground, I think, is big.
Yeah, the decent ground certainly helped Goblet of Fire. It's just a horse that was quite likeable last season at a lowish sort of level and won 3 times on the flat. So he improved his flat rating. Not that I take any notice of official ratings, but he did go up nearly £20 in the ratings through those 3 wins. So if he's improved that much, and I'd say it's a combination of improving and having been well handicapped. But then I liked the way he won at Southall last time. He travelled so smoothly in that and won really nicely. And it's just a typical Nicky Henderson horse on the improve.
Yeah, I'm with 4-year-old Goblet of Fire. Just really against Willie the Builder at the prices, I took a view that half a point bigger of Goblet of Fire was just a little bit more exciting. Willie the Builder ran absolutely fine last time. He should be fine on quicker ground as well, but I was pretty impressed with Goblet of Fire on a sound surface, strong travelling horse, bit of pace on here. I thought he'd progress past a mark of 114. He's getting a good bit of weight from Willie the Builder, so yeah, should be plenty more to come. The Gold Cup handicap chase at Ascot is up next. Straight over to you, Don, with the Irish Raider.
Yeah, like this is I'm getting close to last chance saloon with Am I Right? But I still think he's a well handicapped horse when he has things in his favour. Like he was, it's mad that he hasn't won since he won his beginner's chase in October. Last year or the year before last. But he's run some really good races. He travelled really well in the Bet365 Gold Cup, and the 3 mile 5 trip just maybe found him out. He ran in the Florida Pearl Chase as a novice. He ran in the Neville Hotels race, the Grade 1 chase as a novice. He ran in the Midlands National at Kilbeggan there in July, and he stayed on to take second place behind Ida's Boy. He was off a mark of 142 then. He's off the same mark today or tomorrow. Didn't happen from the Galway plate, which was a bit disappointing. And then at Listowel the last day in the Kerry National, the ground was just too soft for him. So, like, good ground, 3 miles, that seems to be the key to him. He's had a nice break since Listowel. He seems to go well fresh. Henry de Bromhead, his horses could not be in better form. I think he had 7 winners over the course of the weekend there at the last weekend. And it's interesting that he's gone over to allow him a right to take his chance in it. Victorino, actually, Venetia Williams' horse, he was high on my list at the anti-post stage, but he hasn't been declared. So yeah, I think am I right? He's got lots in his favour. Good ground, 3 miles, stiff 3 miles at Ascot. I can see him running well.
I like Chianti Classico, who is a course and distance winner. He was wide and it all went a bit wrong, but he still ran well at Kempton before going on to win at Cheltenham. They were worried about the ground at Cheltenham. It was officially heavier course on day one, but he still went and won. The issue is he lines up off £9 higher. He lines up off £11 higher than his success here, but I think he's a very talented horse. He 8 lengths behind. I know the way you're thinking at Aintree. All right. He was well put in his place, but I think that was a pretty good run. I still think he's capable off a mark of 152, and I actually quite like him going this way. So yeah, all in all, I think there's loads in Chianti Classico's favour, and just about backable at 4.0. Although I wouldn't get carried away. Steve,
a high stakes player, I think, is interesting. He's got a really good record on right-handed tracks. He's won both times he's run over 3 miles over fences. He's got pretty good record fresh, which is a good thing because he hasn't had a huge amount of racing. He's only run 5 times in the last 2 years, but he's won 4 of them, and the other run came on heavy ground. So I think he's a horse with a bit of potential who, going right-handed over this trip, is relatively unexposed and is in a tricky race where Chianti Classico could take the field apart. There's no doubt about that. He's the one who has the potential to go on and be a Gold Cup horse potentially. But further down the weight, high stakes player, I think, is overpriced and a little bit of a sneaky one for Tom Lacey.
All right, that's Chianti Classico, high stakes player, and am I right? We move on now to Breeders' Cup bets. We won't do individual races, we'll just do our bets as a whole. I'll kick off if you don't mind. And first of all, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. I know Steve's got one in here as well, but I do like this Cogburn. It's a race where I think traditionally the British horses are slightly overbet because the Americans aren't as well respected because it's a turf race, but it's a turf sprint race and they have a frighteningly solid record in it. Coburn was very, very good last time, went absolutely hammering the King's Stand winner. All right, maybe that's Carder, but maybe he isn't as good going around a turn. But Cogburn is, since he switched to the turf, he's been nigh on unbeatable, and I just think he'll have too much for the Brits. I think he's a proper American turf sprinter, relentless on the front end, and I'm not sure they'll catch him. So I want to back Cogburn 2.62. I'm probably going to double him up with my other main fancy at the shorter prices. I'll come to a bigger one in a bit, but that's Notable Speech in the Breeders' Cup Turf Mile. I know he's up against Porta Fortuna. He's up against a couple of the fillies that came out the Guineas. I think that's the Guineas is the key form line between the boys and the girls, but I still feel the Colts are a step above this year. And the issue with Notable Speech, he doesn't always run his best race. Sure, he's had a few disappointments. I think the ground was probably to blame last time. I don't know what happened at Ascot, but at Goodwood he looked very good. The first horse since Frankel to be a Guineas winner and then win an all-age Group 1 contest in the same season. And I think he's fairly exceptional. I think on his peak performance is a good bit above what I think Ramatuel and Porta Fortuna can achieve. So I'm going to back Notable Speech in search for Charlie Appleby to the first ever winner of 4 consecutive Breeders' Cup races, the same race. That's what he's looking to do. So Notable Speech and Cogburn for me on the night at the shorter prices. Steve?
Big Evs in the sprint, who gave Mick Appleby a Breeders' Cup winner in the juvenile last year. So it's been there. It's got a lot of pace. Hasn't run since the Nunthorpe when he was drawn right on the raced on the near side, which was a big disadvantage at York Ebor meeting. And so, yeah, Big Evs, I think it's dangerous. Hinges on that US form.
Okay, that's Big Evs. I think Big Mojo will go pretty well tonight as well. Might be back in that horse. And Don, you like one in the Breeders' Cup turf for Brian Meehan, who runs in the same colours as Dangerous Midge.
He does, yeah. And Brian Meehan won the race with Red Rocks as well back in 2006, I think. But JRB, yeah, look, he's got a lot in his favour for a Breeders' Cup turf. I think he's generally an underrated horse. Like the Hampton Court Stakes that he won at Ascot, that was really good. He finished second behind Economics then. At Deauville, the pair of them were clear. And then on softer ground than ideal, he went to Longchamp last time at the Arc meeting and won a Group 2 race, won it, the battle on well to win nicely. He'd be better on better ground. Going left-handed around the turn, he was beaten at Chester, but I don't think there's anything in that really. I think more that the better ground will suit. He's stepping up to 1.5 miles, but we know it's a sharp 1.5 miles. Also, his dam won over 1.5 miles, won a listed race in France over 1.5 miles. So I wouldn't worry about that too much either. He's got a lovely drawn stall 5. Look, Rebel's Romance, he's favourite, and you have to respect him. He's a hugely likeable horse, but he's drawn in 11. He's a 6-year-old now. He just might be vulnerable. And I just think JRB has been just a wee bit underrated.
Yeah, he's probably my closest to a bet in that as well. There you go. All right, that's a look at a few of the Breeders' Cup races. Matchbook Zero long shot time now. Don't forget, Matchbook Zero goes live an hour before the race. You're most likely to get best odds because there's no margin and no commission. So if you want to win bet, get there. Mine is Derma Setagake in the Breeders' Cup Classic. The reasoning is I feel the market is shaped around City of Troy. Now, will he handle the dirt? Won't he handle the dirt? Will he have to 100% because his class might just get him through? He's drawn in 3. If he's in front after a couple of 100 meters, I think he might just stay there, but I'm just not sure he will be. I can't back him. I've got at the prices. I want him to win 100%. A Derby winner winning a Classic would be the best thing ever, but I can't back him at that price, and it just means there's loads here you could back at bigger prices. And one of those is Derma Setagake, who was second in the Breeders' Cup Classic last year to White Barrio. Now, that was off the back of a break. He's had a prep run this time round. The issue is he's subsequently been a bit disappointing, in particular in Dubai, when he'd won the UAE Derby the year before, and he just didn't look the same horse this time round. So that's a massive concern. He'd had an issue on the way in Saudi when another runner had basically taken a bite out of his face. So I don't know if that was to blame for a slightly below par effort, but that track plays more to closers, and that's why it suited Ushpa Tesoro. I think he's more of a sort of American style horse where he won't be too far back. And if he's sort of just on the quarters of the leaders turning in, it might be a different story this time around. The key is the blinkers. The blinkers go on first time. He's at 34.0 for a horse that was second in the race last year. Blinkers on, like that's stupid. So he is well worth, all right, Matchbook Zero win bet, but also back him in the place market. City of Troy at his price, or Derma Setagake and others at massive prices. I think you've got to have those on side all day because City of Troy could genuinely blow out. Although I hope he doesn't. Steve.
A high stakes player for me, it's Ascot in the handicap chase. Good record right-handed, good record on good ground, good record fresh.
And Don.
Yeah, our champ at Ascot in the 2 mile handicap hurdle for all the reasons we outlined earlier. I think the track will suit him, the ground will suit him, his running style will suit, and I think he'll come on from his run the last set marker racing.
Best lays, I'm going to lay Jerry Colomb. I'd be with Emboilen at the prices, but the key is to be against Jerry Colomb. I think 1.72 versus 4.5 and a head split them last year. That's just a bit silly, I think. So laying Jerry Colomb. Best bets, mine is Notable Speech in the Breeders' Cup Turf Mile at 4.0. Steve? Try again. Okay. Don, who's your best bet? Don?
I got to go with French Dynamite in the Charlie Hall.
It was all going so well, Steve.
It was, but we've gone for the same race. I think Grey Dawning, but I'm quite happy to switch to Goblet of Fire in the 332 at Weatherby because I think that one will win as well. But Grey Dawning, I think, is going to be a decent horse this year and kick off in the Charlie Hall with a win.
You can have both. There you go, Grey Dawning and Goblet of Fire. Thanks all. We will be back. We might be taking a pause next week. We'll definitely be back for Cheltenham's November meeting in a couple of weeks, but keep your eyes peeled across social media. Head to insights.matchbook.com for a recap of all of our best bets. They'll be up there very shortly. Thanks to producer Dan Hussey. Steve, Don, thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone.